Welcome back to Stories of Hammer. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But beyond the endless battles, beyond the ceaseless grinding of imperial machinery and the howling of Xenos hordes, there exists something perhaps even more terrifying than death itself. Throughout the vast expanse of the 41st millennium, across 1 million worlds and countless souls, the Imperium of Man and its enemies have perfected the art of punishment to a degree that would make the torturers of ancient terror seem merciful by comparison. Today, we delve into the darkest corners of the Warhammer 40,000 universe to explore the fates that await those who transgress, those who fail, and those who simply find themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time. These are not merely deaths. They are existences stretched across years, decades, sometimes centuries, where every moment brings fresh agony, where the mind screams for release that never comes, where the boundary between flesh and machine, between sanity and madness, between life and death, becomes so blurred that the victim can no longer tell which state they occupy. The Imperium, that vast bureaucratic engine of humanity's survival, operates on a scale almost impossible to comprehend. Across its million worlds, trillions upon trillions of souls toil in the Emperor's name. And where there are so many people, there must be order. That order is maintained not through mercy or understanding, but through fear, through punishments so severe, so utterly devastating to body and soul, that even the thought of transgression makes the blood run cold. But the Imperium holds no monopoly on cruelty. The Chaos Space Marines, those fallen angels who once stood as humanity's greatest defenders, have twisted their former nobility into something monstrous. The Xenos races, from the sadistic dark Eldar to the all-consuming Tyranids, visit horrors upon their victims that defy description. Even the Mechanicus, humanity's technological priesthood, views human suffering through the cold lens of efficiency and utility, creating living tools from those deemed suitable for conversion. What makes these punishments particularly horrifying is not merely their physical brutality, though that is certainly present in abundance. It is the calculated nature of them, the way they strip away everything that makes a person human, everything that gives life meaning, while keeping the victim conscious and aware of what has been taken from them. It is the cruel irony that many of these fates are presented as honors, as opportunities for redemption, as sacred duties, when in reality, they are sentences of eternal torment. In the stories that follow, we will examine the mechanisms of these punishments in detail. We will explore how they are inflicted, why they exist within the logic of the 40k universe, and what they tell us about the nature of this grimdark future. Some of these punishments are reserved for criminals and traitors. Others fall upon the faithful and the loyal. Some last mere moments, while others stretch across centuries. But all of them share one common thread. They are fates that would make any sane person beg for the mercy of a quick death. From the mind-wiped servitors shambling through the corridors of imperial vessels, to the screaming pilots of penitent engines, from the radiation-soaked coffin carriers to the betrayed cultists of the Genestealer infection, from the demon-haunted madness of the Hellbrute to the exquisite agonies inflicted by dark Eldar homunculi, we will spare no detail in our exploration of suffering in the 41st millennium. These are the worst punishments in Warhammer 40,000, and they serve as a reminder that in a universe of endless war, death is often the kindest fate one can hope for. Servitorization, the living death. In the depths of an imperial starship, in the foundries of a forge world, in the maintenance tunnels beneath a hive city, you might encounter them. Shambling figures, their movements jerky and uncertain, their bodies festooned with mechanical augmentations that seem to have been grafted on with more attention to function than mercy. These are servitors, and they represent one of the most ubiquitous and insidious punishments in the entire Imperium of Man. The process of servitorization begins with a crime. though the definition of what constitutes a crime worthy of such punishment varies wildly across the Imperium's million worlds. On some planets, theft of food during a famine might earn you this fate. On others, questioning the local governor's decisions could see you dragged before the Adeptus Mechanicus. Speaking words deemed heretical, failing in your duties to the Imperium, or simply being in the way when the tech priests need raw materials for their servitor quotas. All of these can result in the same terrible end. The convicted criminal is handed over to the Adeptus Mechanicus, those robed priests of the machine god who view the human body as merely another component to be optimized and repurposed. What follows is a process that strips away everything that makes a person who they are, reducing them to a programmable organic machine. The lobotomy is performed first. Not the crude procedures of ancient times, but a precise, technological violation of the mind. The prefrontal cortex, that seat of personality and higher reasoning, is systematically destroyed or rewired. Memories are erased or fragmented beyond recognition. The ability to feel complex emotions, to plan for the future, to dream, to hope, all of these are excised with mechanical precision. What remains is a hollow shell, capable of following simple commands, but possessing none of the spark that once animated it. But the true horror of servitorization lies not in what is taken away, but in what is left behind. You see, the Mechanicus has learned through long experience that servitors function most efficiently when some small fragment of consciousness remains. Complete brain death would leave them no better than simple robots, which the Imperium's prohibition against artificial intelligence makes problematic. So instead, the servitor retains just enough awareness to process sensory input, to maintain basic motor functions, to feel pain when its organic components are damaged. They know, on some deep subconscious level, what has been done to them, but they lack the cognitive capacity to fully understand or articulate that knowledge. It exists as a constant, gnawing wrongness at the core of their being, a sense that something fundamental has been stolen from them, though they can no longer remember what that something was. The physical modifications that follow the mental reconditioning are equally brutal. Arms are removed and replaced with specialized tools, heavy lifting claws for cargo servitors, medical implements for chirurgeon servitors, weapons for gun servitors deployed in combat zones. The chest cavity might be opened and filled with additional machinery, coolant systems, ammunition feeds. Legs are reinforced with hydraulics, or replaced entirely with tracked mobility units. The spine is jack-plugged with neural interface ports that allow tech priests to upload new command protocols directly into what remains of the servitor's nervous system. The skin becomes pale and waxy from a combination of the anti-rejection drugs that prevent the body from destroying its new mechanical components, and the fact that most servitors spend their entire existence in the artificial light of starship corridors or forge temples. Many develop sores and infections around the interface points where metal meets flesh, wounds that are treated only when they threaten to compromise the servitor's functionality. And yet, in rare and terrible cases, the mind wipe is incomplete. Perhaps the lobotomy was performed hastily during wartime, when servitor production had to be increased to meet demand. Perhaps there was some quirk in the victim's neurology that allowed fragments of their former self to survive the process. Perhaps, most cruelly of all, the Mechanicus deliberately left certain pathways intact, believing that a servitor that retained some memory of its former life would be more compliant, more desperate to avoid further punishment. These servitors are conscious, truly, horribly conscious, trapped inside bodies that no longer fully obey their will, forced to carry out tasks that their rewired neurons compel them to perform. They exist in a waking nightmare. They might recognize faces from their previous life, but be unable to speak or gesture to indicate that recognition. They might remember having children, having loved ones, but be incapable of forming the complex thoughts necessary to mourn that loss. All they can do is shuffle through their assigned duties, day after day, year after year, until their organic components finally fail and they are disassembled for parts. There are reports, whispered among those who work closely with servitors, of units that weep constantly from one functional eye while their hands carry out their programmed tasks without pause. Of servitors that have been heard muttering fragments of prayers or names, their damaged vocal processors turning the words into mechanical rasps that barely resemble human speech. Of maintenance crews finding servitors that have attempted to damage themselves, their programming warring with some buried survival instinct that still screams for release from this existence. The Mechanicus dismisses such reports as superstition or malfunction in the servitors' emotion-regulating subroutines. They point out that a properly maintained servitor should display no signs of distress or self-awareness. If such behavior is observed, it is simply evidence that the unit needs to be returned for additional conditioning or replacement. But ask the veterans who have served on starships for decades, who have seen the same servitors shambling through the same corridors for years. Ask them if they truly believe these creatures feel nothing, remember nothing. The answer you receive may disturb you more than you expect. The variety of servitor types is staggering, each designed for a specific function within the Imperium's vast machinery. Gun servitors stand at defensive points, their arms replaced with heavy bolters or lascannons, their targeting systems hardwired into their optic nerves. They track movement with jerky, bird-like precision, and when the command to fire comes, they unleash devastating firepower without hesitation or mercy. Between battles, they stand motionless in their charging cradles, neither sleeping nor waking, simply existing in a state of low-power standby. Cargo servitors labor in the holds of merchant vessels and on loading docks across the Imperium, their augmented muscles and pneumatic limbs allowing them to shift burdens that would crush an unmodified human. They work in shifts that would kill a normal worker, requiring only minimal nutrition paste and the occasional system flush to keep them functional. When one fails, it is simply dragged aside and a replacement brought in, the entire transition taking place with the same emotional weight as changing a broken light fixture. Combat servitors, sometimes called Cataphron battle servitors or Praetorian servitors depending on their configuration, serve the Mechanicus in battle. These hulking constructs barely resemble their human origins. The lower body might be replaced entirely with a tracked platform mounting heavy weapons. The torso is encased in thick armor plating. The head, if it remains at all, is often nothing more than a targeting node with vestigial features that hint at the human face it once was. These servitors wade into enemy fire with mechanical determination, their pain receptors either disabled or routed through processors that interpret damage as simple system alerts rather than agony. And then there are the specialist servitors created for tasks so specific or so dangerous that normal humans cannot or will not perform them. Cherubs, those grotesque flying babies seen throughout Imperial facilities, are created from deceased infants whose bodies are augmented with anti-grav units and mechanical wings. They serve as messengers, carrying scrolls and documents through the halls of power. Their preservation, a practice the ecclesiarchy claims honors the emperor's love of children, though the sight of their withered, preserved forms often disturbs even hardened imperial servants. Nuclear servitors are sent into reactor cores and plasma chambers to perform maintenance that would kill any organic being within seconds. They last perhaps minutes or hours before the radiation destroys their biological components. But that is considered acceptable when measured against the risk of sending a valued tech priest into such environments. The servitors have no choice, no understanding of why their bodies are breaking down, just the inexorable command to continue their task until their systems fail completely. Perhaps most terrible of all are the Space Marine servitors, created from Astartes, who have committed crimes so heinous that even their enhanced physiology and status as the Emperor's Angels of Death cannot save them from punishment. The Iron Hands, Chapter and their successors are particularly known for this practice. To take a space marine, a warrior who has undergone decades of brutal training and genetic enhancement, who has served the Emperor across countless battlefields, and reduce them to a shambling, mind-wiped servant, is seen as both a terrible punishment and a practical use of valuable genetic material. These servitors retain their enhanced strength and durability, making them valuable for the heaviest tasks. But the psychological impact on their battle brothers who must witness this fate is profound. To see a companion, a warrior who once fought beside you with skill and honor, reduced to a drooling, uncomprehending tool, is a reminder that even the Emperor's finest are not above imperial justice. It serves as a powerful deterrent against betrayal, cowardice, or any failure severe enough to warrant such punishment. The servitors of the Adeptus Mechanicus work throughout the Imperium, silent witnesses to the expansion of humanity's domain among the stars. They toil in the factorums of forge worlds, where the heat and toxic fumes would kill unmodified humans within hours. They serve on explorator vessels that venture into unknown regions of space, expendable scouts sent ahead to test for environmental hazards. They maintain the life support systems of void stations, their bodies adapting to microgravity through additional mechanical augmentation. And always there is that nagging question: how much do they understand? When a servitor pauses in its work for just a fraction of a second, when its optical sensors focus on something that should be irrelevant to its programming, when it makes a sound that almost resembles a word or a name, are these simply glitches in its programming? Or are they the dying gasps of a soul trying desperately to break free from its mechanical prison? The Mechanicus would have you believe that servitors are simply tools, no different from any other piece of equipment. But there is a reason that those who work most closely with them often develop superstitions, small rituals of acknowledgement or respect. There is a reason that veterans will sometimes mutter apologies to the servitors that share their transport ships, or whisper prayers for their souls when one is destroyed in combat. Because deep down, everyone knows the truth. Servitors were human once, and in the grim darkness of the far future, that humanity, no matter how thoroughly it has been excised, leaves traces that cannot be entirely erased. The servitor trudging past you might once have been a loving parent, a gifted artist, a hopeful child dreaming of a better future. Now, they are a thing, a tool, a piece of equipment that happens to be partly biological. This is the punishment of servitorization. Not death, but something far worse. The complete erasure of self, the transformation into an object, all while maintaining just enough awareness to process the horror of what has been done. It is a fate that awaits millions across the Imperium, and it serves as a stark reminder that in the 41st millennium, mercy is a luxury that humanity can no longer afford. Archoflagellation, weapons of flesh and fury. If servitorization represents the cold, calculated efficiency of the Mechanicus's approach to punishment, then archoflagellation embodies the ecclesiarchy's belief that suffering can purify the soul. This is punishment as a religious sacrament, pain as a path to redemption. But do not mistake this for mercy. The life of an archoflagellant is short, brutal, and filled with agony from the moment of their creation to their inevitable, violent end. The sentence of archoflagellation is reserved for those who have committed crimes of heresy or blasphemy deemed serious enough to warrant capital punishment, yet not so severe that immediate execution is deemed appropriate. The condemned are judged worthy of a chance at redemption, though the path to that redemption is paved with suffering that would break most minds long before any salvation could be achieved. The creation of an archoflagellant begins in the surgical chambers of the Adeptus Mechanicus, for while the ecclesiarchy may pass the sentence, only the tech priests have the expertise to perform the necessary modifications. The process is extensive, invasive, and performed without anesthetic. After all, the point is not merely to create a weapon, but to ensure the subject understands the magnitude of their transgressions through the medium of pain. Both arms are removed at the shoulder, the stumps cauterized and fitted with specialized mounts. What replaces them depends on the intended role of the arcoflagellant, but most commonly they receive either electroflails or industrial shears. The electroflails are whips of blessed chain, each link containing capacitors that discharge massive electrical bursts on contact with flesh. The industrial shears are massive cutting implements, originally designed for slicing through starship bulkheads, now repurposed to slice through enemy armor and bone with equal ease. The spine is opened up, and a series of chemical injectors are installed directly along the length of the spinal column. These will pump combat drugs, painkillers, and stimulants directly into the subject's central nervous system. But that comes later. For now, they remain dormant, a promise of the frenzy to come. The head is fitted with a pacifier helm, a sealed device that covers the face and cranium completely. Inside this helm, electrodes interface directly with the cerebrum and spinal cord. While wearing the pacifier helm in its active state, the arcoflagellant exists in a kind of waking dream. Their consciousness is flooded with images of saints and holy symbols, their ears filled with endless looping hymnals and prayers, their thoughts guided along channels of devotion and penance. In this state, the arcoflagellant is docile, even serene. They can be commanded to move, to board transport vehicles, to position themselves on the battlefield. But they show no initiative, no personality, no sign of the person they once were. They simply exist, trapped in a religious stupor, awaiting the moment when they will be called upon to prove their devotion through violence. That moment comes when a trigger word is spoken by their handler, usually a ministorum priest or an inquisitor of the Ordo Hereticus. The pacifier helm deactivates. The injectors along the spine simultaneously release their payload of combat drugs, and the arcoflagellant transforms from a shuffling, docile penitent into a shrieking engine of destruction. The drugs flooding their system are a carefully calibrated cocktail of stimulants and aggression enhancers. Barrage increases muscle response and reaction time to superhuman levels. Frenzen strips away inhibition and fear, leaving only pure, distilled rage. Slaught dulls pain receptors to the point where even catastrophic injuries register only as distant sensations. Spur floods the bloodstream with adrenaline and combat hormones. The effect is immediate and devastating. The arcoflagellant's entire consciousness narrows to a single purpose: destroy everything in their path that is not marked as friendly by their neural conditioning. They charge forward with no regard for their own safety, their weapon arms whirling in patterns of destruction that no human mind could consciously control. The electroflails crack and snap, each impact delivering enough electrical current to stop a heart or cook internal organs. The industrial shears close on limbs and torsos with hydraulic force measured in tons per square inch. But here is the cruel genius of the arcoflagellant's design. They are not mindless. The drugs suppress higher reasoning and flood their system with artificial rage, but the person underneath remains aware. They know what they are doing. They feel the impacts of enemy weapons tearing through their flesh. They hear their own screams mixing with the screams of those they kill. They are forced to be complicit witnesses to their own transformation into a living weapon. And when the battle ends, when the enemy is destroyed, or the arcoflagellant's handlers judge that they have served their purpose, another trigger word is spoken. The pacifier helm reactivates. The frenzy ends as abruptly as it began. The arcoflagellant returns to their state of religious torpor, the memory of what they just experienced, fading into the background hum of prayers and hymns that fill their consciousness. Most arcoflagellants survive only a handful of battles. The combat drugs that make them so effective are also toxic, damaging organs and degrading neural pathways with each use. The injuries they sustain, even with the painkillers making them seem trivial in the moment, accumulate over time. And sometimes, the frenzy does not entirely fade when the pacifier helm reactivates. A particularly brutal battle might push an arcoflagellant past the point where their conditioning can bring them back, leaving them in a permanent state of murderous rage that can only be ended with a bolt round to the brain. There are, however, rare exceptions. Some archoflagellants, whether through genetic quirk, exceptional physical conditioning, or sheer force of will, survive multiple engagements. These individuals, known as endurants, are considered by the ecclesiarchy to have earned a measure of the emperor's favor. They fight with even greater ferocity than their peers, as if some part of them has internalized their role and accepted the path to redemption through endless violence. The Sisters of Battle, particularly the Order of the Valorous Heart, view these endurants with something approaching reverence. They see in them proof that even the most grievous sins can be atoned for through sufficient suffering and dedication. That such atonement requires the complete destruction of everything that made the person who they were seems not to concern them. After all, in the Imperium's theology, the self is a small price to pay for the salvation of the soul. The deployment of archoflagellants is a tactical decision as much as a theological one. They are unleashed against enemy positions, where the shock of their assault can break morale and create openings for more controlled forces to exploit. They are sent into breaches and choke points where the enemy's superior numbers or firepower would make conventional assault prohibitively costly. They are expendable, replaceable, and terrifyingly effective. Inquisitors of the Ordo Hereticus often requisition archoflagellants for their personal retinues, valuing them both as weapons and as visible reminders of what awaits those who stray from the Emperor's light. Some inquisitors are known to maintain entire packs of archoflagellants, storing them in the holds of their starships between missions, ready to be unleashed at a moment's notice. But there is a darker side to the archoflagellant program, whispered about in the corridors of the Inquisition and among the more cynical elements of the Mechanicus. Not all who are sentenced to archoflagellation are guilty of the crimes they are accused of. Political rivals can be condemned. Witnesses to inconvenient truths can be silenced. Anyone who becomes problematic to someone with sufficient power might find themselves accused of heresy, their protests of innocence lost in the mechanical efficiency of the ecclesiarchy's justice system. And once the transformation is complete, once the mind has been rewired and the combat drugs have flooded the system for the first time, there is no going back. The person who was is gone, replaced by a weapon that wears their face. Any truth they might have spoken is lost forever, buried beneath layers of chemical conditioning and religious programming. This is the punishment of archoflagellation, a life reduced to brief moments of chemically induced frenzy, punctuated by long periods of enforced religious ecstasy. No future, no hope, no possibility of anything beyond serving as a living weapon until injury or toxicity claims the body and grants the final mercy of death. It is judgment and execution stretched across weeks or months, rather than delivered in a single moment, and the condemned are forced to participate in their own punishment with every swing of their weapon arms. The ecclesiarchy presents this as an opportunity for redemption, a chance to wash away sin through sacred violence, but stand too close to a pack of archoflagellants as they wait to be unleashed. Listen to the sounds that sometimes emerge from behind those pacifier helms, half prayer, half sob, and you might wonder if redemption is truly what awaits these tortured souls, or if the Emperor's mercy is simply another lie we tell ourselves to justify the horrors we inflict in his name. Penitent engines, redemption, through agony, where archoflagellants represent a punishment that can at least claim some element of mercy in its brevity. The penitent engine stands as perhaps the most overtly cruel, sanctioned punishment within the ecclesiarchy's arsenal. These towering bipedal combat walkers, standing nearly twice the height of a man, are outwardly similar to the honored dreadnoughts of the Space Marine chapters. But the comparison is a mockery, for where a dreadnought preserves a hero in honored service, a penitent engine transforms the condemned into a living monument to suffering. The crimes that warrant interment in a penitent engine are those deemed too severe for even archoflagellation. These are the ultimate transgressions within the Imperium's rigid theological framework. a priest who has led their flock into heresy, a sister of battle whose failure resulted in the deaths of her sisters or the loss of a sacred relic, a member of the ecclesiarchy hierarchy who has been found guilty of the gravest corruption. For these individuals, death would be too lenient. They require a punishment that allows them to continue serving the emperor while experiencing the full weight of their sins with every waking moment. The condemned is brought before a penitent engine, that nightmarish construct of metal and purpose. Unlike the fully enclosed sarcophagus of a space marine dreadnought, the pilot of a penitent engine is mounted on the front of the machine, fully exposed to enemy fire. Their limbs are spread wide and locked into the mechanisms that control the walker's massive weapon arms. A forest of cables and neural connectors pierce their flesh, linking directly to their nervous system. The installation process is performed without anesthetic. The ecclesiarchy's logic is simple. The condemned must feel every moment of their transformation if they are to truly understand the magnitude of their crimes. Fiber optic neural connectors are driven through the skull and into the brain. Chemical injectors are implanted into the spine and throughout the torso. The entire body is hardwired to the penitent engine's control systems, turning the pilot into a living interface between machine and purpose. But here is where the cruelty becomes truly evident. The pilot is not protected from harm. They are deliberately exposed, mounted on the front of the war machine like a figurehead on an ancient sailing vessel. The ecclesiarchy teaches that this is the emperor's judgment made manifest. If the pilot is worthy, the emperor will protect them. If they die to enemy fire, then that is the fate their sins have earned them. The reality, of course, is that the pilot's exposure serves a dual purpose. First, it provides motivation for other members of the ecclesiarchy. See what awaits those who fail in their duties. See the price of sin made manifest in screaming, bleeding flesh. Second, and perhaps more importantly, it ensures that the pilot experiences the full horror of battle from a position of utter vulnerability. The chemical injectors serve their own terrible function. They do not, like those of the arco-flagellant, induce frenzy or dull pain. Instead, they do the opposite. They keep the pilot conscious and aware regardless of their injuries. They enhance sensory perception rather than dulling it. The pilot feels every impact with heightened clarity. They feel their flesh tearing, their bones breaking, their organs failing. The drugs simply ensure they remain alive and conscious through it all, experiencing every microsecond of their agony in excruciating detail. And they can see, oh yes, they can see everything. As the penitent engine charges into battle, its massive feet crushing rubble and bodies alike, the pilot watches it all. They see the faces of the enemy as the engine's massive close combat weapons, usually some combination of heavy flamers and enormous buzzing chainsaws or power blades, tear through flesh and armor. They hear the screams, smell the burning meat, feel the impact of every blow their machine body delivers. But they also see when enemy fire finds them, a lasgun burst that burns through their exposed abdomen, a bolt round that explodes against the penitent engine's armor mere centimeters from their head, shrapnel tearing through their arm, a power sword that finds the gap in the engine's defenses and carves through their leg. All of these they experience with perfect, chemical-enhanced clarity. The penitent engine's programming is designed to interpret the pilot's pain as motivation. The more damage the pilot sustains, the more aggressive the walker becomes. It charges forward with greater speed, its weapons carving through enemies with increased ferocity. The machine feeds on the pilot's suffering, translating agony into violence in a perverse feedback loop. And here is perhaps the most psychologically devastating aspect of the penitent engine. The pilot is shown their own face. Through a combination of chemical stimulants and synaptic manipulation, the pilot's perception is altered so that they see their own features in the face of every enemy they kill. The ecclesiarchy justifies this as a way of making the pilot confront their sins with every blow struck. In reality, it is simply another layer of psychological torture, forcing the condemned to participate in a surreal nightmare where they repeatedly destroy images of themselves. Some pilots last for hours in battle. Some, incredibly, survive multiple engagements. These rare individuals are paraded before the faithful as proof of the Emperor's mercy, living testaments to the power of redemption through suffering. But watch their eyes during these displays. Notice the thousand-yard stare, the way they flinch at sudden movements, the tremors that run through their damaged bodies, even when the chemical injectors have been dialed back to maintenance levels. These survivors have not been redeemed. They have been broken so thoroughly that their psyches have simply shattered into fragments that no longer fit together properly. They continue to function because the penitent engine systems keep their bodies alive and their neurons firing, not because any part of them wants to continue existing. They are walking dead, kept animate by machinery and chemistry, waiting for the battle that will finally grant them the mercy of true death. The Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle, consider it their sacred duty to witness penitent engines in combat. They view these machines as holy instruments of the Emperor's justice, tangible proof that even the greatest sins can be atoned for through sufficient suffering. They march alongside the penitent engines in battle, their faith bolstered by the presence of these towering monuments to sacrifice and redemption. But ask the tech priests who maintain the penitent engines what they find when they perform post-battle maintenance. Ask them about the screaming that sometimes continues even after the chemical injectors have been shut down, when the pilot should be unconscious or catatonic from shock and blood loss. Ask them about the way some pilots beg to be allowed to die, their ruined vocal cords barely able to form words, their eyes pleading for a mercy that will never come. The tech priests, with their cold practicality and mechanical detachment, will tell you that such behavior is simply evidence of incomplete spiritual conditioning, that a truly repentant sinner would embrace their suffering as the price of redemption, that the Emperor's will is inscrutable, and who are they to question the ecclesiarchy's methods of punishment and purification? But in the quiet moments, when the battle hymns have faded and the cheering crowds have dispersed, some tech priests admit to a certain unease around the penitent engines. There is something fundamentally wrong, they whisper, about keeping a human being alive in such conditions, something that offends even their mechanically enhanced sensibilities about the proper relationship between flesh and machine. A variant of the penitent engine exists called the mortifier, used specifically for Sisters Repentia, battle sisters who have failed in their duties and seek redemption through death in battle. These machines are equipped with even heavier weaponry and designed for the most suicidal of assaults. The pilots of mortifiers are among the most fanatical servants of the Emperor, women who truly believe that their suffering serves a higher purpose. Whether that belief makes their fate better or worse is a question without a clear answer. Is it more merciful to suffer while believing that suffering has meaning? Or does that belief simply add another layer of tragedy to an already horrific existence? The penitent engine stands as a symbol of the Imperium's approach to justice and redemption. It is not enough to simply punish the transgressor. The punishment must be public, must be spectacular, must serve as both an example to others and a demonstration of the power of faith. The suffering of the individual is secondary to the message their agony conveys, that sin will not be tolerated, that failure demands penance, and that the Emperor's judgment is as merciless as it is absolute. This is the punishment of the penitent engine: to be transformed into a weapon that feeds on your pain, to be exposed to enemy fire with no protection beyond the Emperor's supposed favor, to have your perception twisted so that you see yourself in every enemy you slay, to be kept alive through chemistry and machinery long past the point where a merciful death should have claimed you, to know that every moment of your suffering is being witnessed and celebrated as proof of the power of faith. And at the end, when your body, finally fails, despite the drugs and the machinery, when the penitent engine crashes to the ground with you still trapped in its mechanisms, you might hope for the mercy of death. But even that final release is denied to you, for the priests and tech marines will recover your body, will perform their rites and rituals over your broken flesh, and will declare that you have been redeemed. They will say you died in service to the Emperor, that your suffering has purchased forgiveness for your sins. They will hold you up as an example to others, proof that even the most grievous transgressions can be atoned for through sufficient pain and dedication. But you, in whatever fragment of consciousness persists in those final moments, will know the truth. You died screaming. You died in agony. You died not because your sins were forgiven, but because your body could no longer sustain the torment being inflicted upon it. The redemption they speak of exists only in their rhetoric, not in your experience. This is the reality of the penitent engine, and it serves as a reminder that in the Imperium of Man, mercy is a word spoken by priests and politicians, but rarely experienced by those who find themselves on the receiving end of imperial justice. Penal legions and the coffin detail, expendable flesh, while some punishments in the Imperium involve transformation into living weapons or machines, others maintain a veneer of humanity even as they guarantee death. The penal legions, also known in Imperial High Gothic as the legions penitanti, represent the Imperium's solution to a simple, logistical problem. What to do with criminals when execution would waste potentially useful bodies, and servitorization is impractical or unavailable. The crimes that land someone in a penal legion are varied and often arbitrary: murder, desertion, cowardice in the face of the enemy, theft from the Departamento Munitorum, sedition, unauthorized reproduction, failure to meet production quotas, public disorder, assault on an imperial official. The list goes on and on and on. In the vast bureaucratic machinery of the Imperium, justice is often less about the severity of the crime than about the convenience of the punishment. A soldier who flees from battle on one world might be executed on the spot. On another world, under different circumstances, the same crime might result in assignment to a penal legion. The difference lies not in the act itself, but in whether the local authorities have reached their quota of condemned workers for the month, whether the nearest forge world has requested servitor components, or whether the Imperial Guard needs additional bodies to throw into a meat grinder somewhere in the sector. The process of becoming a penal legionnaire begins with a trial, though that term flatters the proceedings considerably. Most trials last minutes. Evidence is presented if it exists, but often the accusation alone is sufficient. The accused might be granted the opportunity to speak in their defense, but more commonly, they simply stand in silence as judgment is pronounced. For those condemned to the penal legions, death by firing squad is commuted to life service, which is to say, service until death claims them in some other, generally more prolonged and painful manner. The condemned are immediately processed. Heads are shaved. Unit insignia are tattooed onto their scalps with painful precision. Any personal possessions are confiscated and redistributed. Then comes the collar. The explosive collar is the penal legion's primary tool of discipline and control. Made of reinforced plasteel, it locks around the neck and cannot be removed without the proper authorization codes. A small explosive charge is built into the collar, positioned with care to ensure maximum effectiveness. When detonated, the blast is directed inward, designed to kill only the wearer while leaving anyone nearby unharmed. The collar serves multiple purposes beyond simple execution. It is a constant physical reminder of the legionnaire's status, a weight around the neck that makes restful sleep impossible. It broadcasts a tracking signal that allows the legion's commanders to monitor the location of every single member of their unit. Most importantly, it is a psychological weapon. The threat of detonation hangs over every legionnaire at every moment. hesitate in battle, and the collar detonates. Fall behind during a forced march, and the collar detonates. Question an order, and the collar detonates. The penal legions are not organized like standard Imperial Guard regiments. They exist as attachments to regular fighting forces, deployed in situations where regular soldiers would suffer unacceptable casualties. They are used to test enemy defenses, marched across minefields to reveal the location of explosives, sent into buildings suspected of harboring enemy soldiers, ordered to charge enemy fortifications without adequate support or covering fire. Their officers, called prefects penitente, are drawn from the ranks of the adeptus arbiters, or fanatical members of the Departamento Munitorum. These individuals view their charges not as soldiers to be led, but as resources to be expended. They maintain discipline through fear and occasional demonstration executions. Legionnaires who show cowardice have their collars detonated publicly, their bodies left where they fall as a warning to others. Some penal legions are equipped with friends-on dispensers, auto-injectors, that flood their bloodstreams with combat drugs, similar to those used by arcoflagellants. These chemically enhanced legionnaires charge into battle with suicidal abandon, their fear overridden by artificial aggression. Many die in the first moments of combat, shot down by enemy fire before they can close to melee range. Those who survive the initial charge often die anyway, their hearts giving out from the strain of the drugs, or their minds snapping under the combined stress of chemical alteration and combat trauma. Life expectancy in a penal legion is measured in engagements rather than years. Most die in their first battle. Those who survive that initial crucible might make it through 2 or 3 more engagements before probability catches up with them. The rare veterans who somehow manage to live through half a dozen battles are savage, hardened individuals who have walked into hell multiple times and emerged screaming their defiance. These survivors sometimes form the core of specialist units, given marginally better equipment and marginally less suicidal missions. But they are never granted freedom, never allowed to return to civilian life. The sentence is for life, and life in a penal legion is expected to be short. Those who persist in living despite all odds are simply given more opportunities to die. One of the most notorious assignments in the penal legions, however, is not combat duty, but maintenance work, specifically the coffin detail, also known as the coffin carriers. Certain Imperial starships, particularly older vessels from the dark age of technology or experimental designs from ambitious forge worlds, use plasma reactors and warp drives that require fuel cells of extraordinary radioactivity. These cells are shaped like coffins, large, heavy, and emanating lethal levels of radiation. When they are spent, they must be removed and replaced. The process cannot be automated. The corridors that house these fuel cells were not designed with servitors in mind, and the radiation they emit interferes with electronic systems in ways that make mechanical handling impractical. The solution is simple, brutal, and entirely in keeping with the Imperium's approach to problem solving: use people. Members of the penal legion assigned to the coffin detail are given minimal protective gear, thin rad suits that might delay the inevitable by seconds or minutes, but offer no real protection against the levels of radiation involved. They are marched to the reactor spaces, where the spent fuel cells wait. The cells must be lifted manually. 4 to 6 legionnaires take position around each cell, gripping the handles built into its sides. The weight is tremendous, enough to strain even enhanced muscles. But the weight is the least of their concerns. The radiation begins its work immediately. It penetrates the rad suits as if they were tissue paper, bombarding the legionnaires' bodies with particles that tear through cellular structures like bullets through flesh. DNA strands break apart. Cells begin dying by the millions. But death does not come instantly. The procession begins. Slowly, carefully, the legionnaires carry the fuel cell through the corridors of the ship. The distance might be 100 meters. It might be a kilometer. Time loses meaning when every second brings fresh waves of cellular destruction. The first symptoms appear within minutes: nausea, vertigo, a strange metallic taste in the mouth. Some legionnaires vomit into their helmets the rad suits offering no way to remove the contents. They continue walking, breathing their own bile, because to stop is to delay the mission and risk having their collars detonated. The skin begins to change. Blisters form on exposed areas. Hair falls out in clumps. Blood vessels rupture beneath the skin, creating patterns of purple and black that spread like spiderwebs across their flesh. And still they walk, step by agonizing step, carrying their burden toward the designated storage area. Some collapse before reaching the destination. Their muscles simply fail, bones no longer strong enough to support their weight. The radiation has begun breaking down the tissues that hold their bodies together. When this happens, the remaining legionnaires must continue alone, carrying the now heavier burden between fewer people, absorbing even higher doses of radiation as a result. By the time they reach the storage area and deposit their burden, most of the coffin carriers are already dying. Their bodies are saturated with radiation far beyond any lethal dose. They are marched back to a designated quarantine area, where they will be left to die over the course of the next hours or days. The dying process is neither quick nor painless. The radiation has destroyed their bone marrow, so their blood can no longer produce new cells. They hemorrhage internally, blood leaking from every orifice. Their digestive tracts slough off their linings, causing them to vomit and defecate blood. Their immune systems collapse, and opportunistic infections spread through their ravaged bodies. Their hair and teeth fall out. Their skin peels away in sheets. And through it all, they remain conscious. The human body is remarkably resilient in some ways, and the brain is often the last organ to completely fail. So the coffin carriers die knowing exactly what is happening to them, experiencing every stage of their disintegration with full awareness. The record for time survived after a coffin detail assignment is measured in days, not weeks. Most die within hours. The lucky ones go into shock or their brains hemorrhage early, granting them the mercy of unconsciousness before the worst of it. The unlucky ones remain aware until the very end, their last moments spent in a hell of biological collapse and unrelenting agony. Why does the Imperium continue this practice when surely there must be safer alternatives? The answer is twofold. First, and most pragmatically, penal legionnaires are expendable. Their deaths cost nothing, save nothing. They were already condemned to die for their crimes. This simply makes that death useful. Second, and perhaps more insidiously, it serves as a deterrent. Every soldier in the Imperial Guard knows about the coffin detail. They know that assignment to a penal legion could mean not a glorious death in combat, but a slow dissolution in a reactor chamber, melting from the inside out, while carrying a burden they can barely lift. This knowledge helps maintain discipline. It ensures that soldiers think twice before committing the crimes that might land them in such a unit. The penal legions as a whole exist as a brutal reminder of the Imperium's pragmatism and cruelty. They turn criminals into cannon fodder, weakness into a weapon, desperation into a military asset. They waste no resources beyond the minimal equipment required to get their condemned soldiers into combat or into the reactor chambers, where they will serve their final purpose. There are tales of penal legionnaires who survived long enough to earn redemption, who accumulated enough battle honors or survived enough engagements that their sentences were commuted. These stories are told as inspirational parables, proof that even the lowest can rise through service and sacrifice. The truth, as always, is more complicated. Yes, some legionnaires have survived long enough to be pardoned, but for every one of those, thousands have died in obscurity, their bodies left to rot on battlefields across the galaxy or dissolved into radioactive sludge in the depths of starship reactor chambers. The stories of redemption exist to give hope, to motivate, to maintain the fiction that the system offers a path to salvation. But the penal legions are not designed for redemption. They are designed for expenditure. Every order given, every mission assigned, every deployment made operates on the assumption that the legionnaires involved are already dead. Any who survive are simply statistical anomalies, outliers who have defied the probabilities that should have claimed them. This is the punishment of the penal legions: to be marked as expendable, to have your life valued at less than that of the ammunition expended in battle, to know that every mission might be your last, and that your death will be noted only as a casualty statistic. To face death not once, in a moment of valor or sacrifice, but repeatedly, in a grinding attrition that wears away hope along with flesh. And for those assigned to the coffin detail, it is worse still. At least in battle, there is the possibility of survival, the chance that skill or luck might see you through. But the coffin detail offers no such hope. It is a death sentence delivered in installments, measured in the time it takes to walk from one end of a corridor to another, carrying a burden that kills you even as you bear it. This is justice in the Imperium of Man. This is the price of crime, of failure, of being in the wrong place at the wrong time when the Departamento Munitorum needs bodies to fill quotas. This is what awaits those who transgress or simply have the misfortune to be caught up in the machinery of imperial law. And across 1,000,000 worlds, in 1,000,000 trials, the sentence continues to be passed. Guilty, condemned to the penal legions. Take them away. The next case awaits. The Demoncolaba, the ultimate violation. In a universe filled with horrors beyond human comprehension, where the boundaries of acceptable cruelty are pushed to their absolute limits on a daily basis, there exists one punishment, one fate, one creation so utterly depraved that even hardened veterans of the Inquisition and battle-scarred Space Marines recoil in disgust when confronted with its reality. The Demoncolaba stands as perhaps the single most horrific punishment ever devised in the 40,000-year history of humanity's struggle among the stars. This abomination was the creation of the Iron Warriors Traitor Legion, specifically the warsmith Honsu, in the fortress of Kalan Gol on the demon world of Medrengard, deep within the Eye of Terror. Following his victory at Hydra Caudatus, where he stole significant quantities of gene seed from the Imperial Fists chapter, Honsu faced a problem common to Chaos Space Marine warbands: how to create new Astartes without access to the sophisticated facilities and technology of the Loyalist chapters, or the infrastructure they had abandoned when they fled into the Eye of Terror 10,000 years ago. The solution he devised, in collaboration with geneticists of the Dark Mechanicum, was a blasphemous fusion of biological science, dark sorcery, and utter disregard for human suffering. It was a system that could produce new Chaos Space Marines at an accelerated rate. It required only 3 components: stolen gene seed, young male adolescents, and women. The women were the key. They were rounded up from among the slave populations of Medrengard, human prisoners taken in raids or born into servitude within the Eye of Terror. Young women, old women, it mattered little. They were all suitable for the purpose Honsu had designed. These women were shackled naked within iron cages, unable to move more than a few inches in any direction. Then they were force-fed, not normal rations, but a specially formulated nutrient paste delivered in massive quantities day after day after day. The forced feeding continued until their bodies swelled to grotesque proportions, their abdomens distending, their limbs becoming vestigial appendages barely visible beneath folds of stretched skin and bloated flesh. When a woman had been fattened to the point of immobility, when her body had been warped into something that barely resembled human form, the Dark Mechanicum's savage morticians would perform their surgery. Her vocal cords were removed or cut, ensuring she could not scream, or if she could, that the sound would be so distorted as to be unrecognizable as human. Her internal chemistry was altered through a combination of gene seed implantation and warp-tainted surgical modification. Then came the true horror. An adolescent male, selected from among the slave children of Medrengard, would be brought to the operating table. Without anesthetic, without ceremony, without any acknowledgement of their humanity, the woman's massively distended abdomen would be cut open. The teenager would be forced inside her womb in what can only be described as a reverse caesarean section. His limbs would be stapled or sutured to the interior walls of her body. The incision would be sewn shut, and then they would wait. Inside the living prison of the Demonculaba's body, grotesque biological processes would begin. Tentacle-like appendages would burrow into the teenager's flesh, injecting him with gene seed and other mutagenic substances. Over the course of days, his body would be forcibly transformed. Bones would thicken and lengthen. Muscle mass would increase exponentially. Additional organs would grow within his chest cavity. The unique biology of the Astartes, created not through careful surgical implantation, but through forced, accelerated mutation, driven by dark science and demonic power. The process was not gentle. It was not careful. It was violation on a cellular level, every part of the teenager's body breaking down and rebuilding itself according to the template imposed by the gene seed. And through it all, he remained conscious, trapped in darkness, unable to move, unable to breathe except through the biological connections that linked him to the Demonculaba's body, experiencing the most fundamental violation possible, the theft of his very identity, his humanity literally being stripped away and replaced with something monstrous. Days later, the birthing would occur. The Demonculaba's body would convulse, and the new creation would emerge. It was the size of a fully grown space marine. It possessed the enhanced strength and durability of the Astartes, but it was completely without skin. The raw, red, glistening thing that slithered out of the Demonculaba's womb was a walking anatomy diagram, all exposed muscle and visible organs. It screamed. Oh yes, it could scream, even if the Demonculaba herself had been silenced. It screamed with pain, with confusion, with the animal terror of a mind that moments ago had been a frightened child and was now something else entirely, trapped in a body of agony. The savage morticians would inspect these newborn Chaos Marines. If the transformation had been successful, if the body showed the proper mutations and enhancements, the candidate would be approved. Skin would be stitched onto its body, skin harvested from other slaves who had been force-fed until their skin stretched beyond normal proportions, then flayed alive and their hides dried in the desert air of Medrengard. If the candidate was deemed unworthy, if mutations had twisted it into something too monstrous, even for the Iron Warriors, it would be flushed into the sewers beneath Karlan Gol. Most died in that toxic darkness, but some survived. These rejects, calling themselves the Unfleshed, banded together in a tribe of skinless mutants who lived in the wastelands surrounding the fortress. Despite everything done to them, despite their horrific transformation, they retained enough memory of humanity to build a crude shrine to the Emperor from scrap metal and worship it with devotion that would shame many loyal Imperial citizens. But what of the Demonculaba herself? What of the woman whose body had been violated in the most fundamental way imaginable? If she survived the birthing, and many did not, their bodies simply unable to withstand the trauma, the cycle would begin again. Within days, another teenager would be forced into her womb. Another transformation would begin. The process would repeat and repeat and repeat until her body finally failed completely. There was no escape, no hope of rescue, no possibility of death except through the body's ultimate collapse under the strain of repeated violation. The Demonculaba existed in a hell beyond description, unable to scream, unable to move, unable to do anything but suffer, as her body was used as a biological factory for the production of Chaos Space Marines. The psychological dimension of this punishment is almost impossible to fully articulate. Imagine having your body transformed into something unrecognizable. Imagine being unable to move, to speak, to communicate in any way. Imagine being violated repeatedly in the most intimate manner possible, not for pleasure or procreation in any natural sense, but as a component in a manufacturing process. Imagine knowing that this will continue day after day, birth after birth, until your body finally gives up and grants you the mercy of death. And the teenagers who were transformed? They emerged as monsters in more ways than one. Their bodies had been warped into Astartes forms, yes, but their minds remembered being children. They remembered their mothers, their friends, their hopes for the future. Those memories were now locked inside the consciousness of killing machines, accessible but useless, a reminder of everything they had lost. When Captain Uriel Ventris of the Ultramarines and his companions finally destroyed the Demonculaba facilities during their Death Oath mission into the Eye of Terror, the relief among their forces was palpable. This was not merely the destruction of a tactical asset of the enemy. This was the eradication of something that should never have existed, something so fundamentally wrong that even the ruinous powers might have looked upon it with a measure of unease. Honsu's swearing of vengeance against Ventris for this act is telling. The loss of the Demonculaba facilities represented years of effort, tremendous resources expended, and the elimination of his most effective means of creating new Chaos Marines. But more than that, it represented the destruction of his monument to cruelty, his proof that he could exceed even the darkest imaginations of his fellow warpsmiths in the depths of depravity he was willing to sink to in pursuit of power. The Demonculaba stands apart from other punishments discussed in this exploration because it serves no redemptive purpose, no theological function, no tactical advantage beyond the simple production of soldiers. It exists purely as an expression of malice, a demonstration that when power is unchecked and empathy is abandoned, there is no limit to the suffering that can be inflicted. Other punishments in the Imperium at least claim some higher purpose. Servitorization creates useful workers. Archoflagellation offers a path to redemption. Penitent engines demonstrate the power of faith. Penal legions serve military needs. Even the horrific practices of the Dark Eldar can be rationalized within their twisted cultural framework as necessary for survival against Slaanesh. But the Demonculaba, it was cruelty for efficiency's sake, stripped of even the pretense of moral justification. It was the logical endpoint of viewing sentient beings as nothing more than resources to be exploited, bodies to be used until they break. It was what happens when brilliant minds devote themselves entirely to solving practical problems without any consideration for the ethical implications of their solutions. The fate of the Demonculaba and their victims serves as a dark mirror to some of the Imperium's own practices. Is servitorization really so different in principle, if not in execution? Both reduce human beings to components in a larger machine. Both strip away individuality and agency. Both cause profound suffering in service to practical goals. The difference is one of degree and societal acceptance, not fundamental philosophy. This uncomfortable parallel might be why even within the grim darkness of the 40k universe, the Demonculaba is spoken of with particular horror. It reminds those who encounter it that the line between the Imperium's brutal pragmatism and Chaos's utter depravity is thinner than they would like to believe. It suggests that the mechanisms of control and punishment that the Imperium relies upon could, under the right circumstances, and with the removal of a few limiting taboos, become something equally monstrous. The Demonculaba is proof that in the 41st millennium, there is always a worse fate imaginable. No matter how terrible the punishment, no matter how severe the suffering, there exists the possibility of something even more depraved lurking in the darkness of human, or post-human, imagination. And that, perhaps, is the most disturbing realization of all, that the Demonculaba was not created by daemons or xenos or alien intelligences beyond human understanding. It was created by beings who were once human, who once served the Emperor, who once stood among humanity's greatest defenders. The capacity for such cruelty exists within the human spirit, waiting only for the right circumstances and the absence of restraint to manifest itself. This is the punishment of the Demoncolaba, to be reduced to a biological mechanism, to have your body transformed into a prison and factory, to suffer violations so profound that death becomes not a fear, but a desperate hope, to exist in a state of torment so complete that even the unfleshed, those failed products of the process who survived in the wastelands, are considered to have gotten the better end of the bargain. It is suffering without purpose, pain without the promise of redemption, violation so fundamental that it erases everything that made the victim human and replaces it with nothing but agony and despair. It is perhaps the single worst fate that can befall a human being in the entire galaxy, and its existence serves as a reminder that in the grim darkness of the far future, there truly is no limit to the horrors that await the unwary, the unlucky, or the condemned. Geller Field. Failure. When reality breaks, we have explored punishments inflicted by the Imperium, by chaos, by the cruel necessities of war and the darker impulses of those in power. But some fates in the 41st millennium are not punishments in the traditional sense. They are not sentences passed by judges or inflicted by victors upon the vanquished. Instead, they are catastrophes, accidents, the terrible price paid for humanity's reliance on technology it no longer fully understands, for travel through a dimension that was never meant to be traversed by mortal beings. The Geller Field is one of humanity's most crucial technologies, invented during the dark age of technology, alongside the warp drive itself. It creates a bubble of reality around a starship, a protective envelope that maintains the laws of physics as they exist in real space, even as the vessel travels through the immaterium. That psychically reactive dimension of pure thought and emotion that humanity calls the warp. Without Geller fields, interstellar travel as the Imperium knows it would be impossible. The warp, that roiling sea of psychic energy that underlies and permeates real space, is inimical to unprotected matter. Physical laws do not function properly there. Time flows in loops and spirals rather than in straight lines. Distance becomes a meaningless concept. And most dangerously, the warp is home to entities, demons, warp predators, the servants of the dark gods, that exist specifically to torment and consume mortal souls. The Geller field keeps these horrors at bay. As long as it remains active, as long as that bubble of reality holds firm, a starship can traverse the warp in relative safety. The emphasis is very much on relative. Even with functioning Geller fields, warp travel is dangerous. Navigators go mad from prolonged exposure to the immaterium. Time dilation means that a journey of weeks in the warp might translate to years in real space, or vice versa. And always, there is the knowledge that only a thin shell of technology stands between you and literal hell. But what happens when that shell fails? Geller field. Failure is rare. The Adeptus Mechanicus has devoted enormous resources to ensuring the reliability of these systems, and redundancies are built into every design. Multiple generators, constant monitoring, regular maintenance performed with religious devotion, all of these help minimize the risk. But with millions of ships traversing the warp at any given moment, and with some of those ships using technology thousands of years old that no one truly understands anymore, failures do occur. The statistics are chilling. A small but significant percentage of ships entering the warp are never seen again. Some of these disappearances are attributable to other causes: warp storms, navigation errors, mechanical failures unrelated to the Geller field. But many, perhaps most, are the result of Geller field collapse. When a Geller field fails, the change is often instantaneous. One moment, the ship is protected, reality is functioning normally, the crew is going about their duties with the usual tension that comes from warp travel. The next moment, the bubble collapses and unreality floods in. The physical ship itself begins to change. Metal flows like water. Corridors extend or contract, defying the geometry of the original design. Walls might become translucent, revealing spaces that should not exist. Chambers that were never part of the ship's blueprint, filled with impossible architecture and things that hurt to look at. Gravity becomes optional, or reverses, or intensifies until crew members are crushed against bulkheads by their own weight. Time fractures. In one part of the ship, minutes might pass. In another section, mere meters away, years could elapse. Crew members might age decades in seconds, their bodies withering into ancient husks, even as their minds scream with the knowledge of what is happening to them. Or they might be caught in temporal loops, experiencing the same moment of terror over and over again, unable to break free, unable to do anything but relive their horror in endless repetition. The crew themselves undergo transformations that make any physical changes to the ship seem merciful by comparison. The warp is the dimension of emotion and thought given form. When humans are exposed to it without protection, their bodies begin to reflect their inner states in the most literal and horrifying ways possible. Fear becomes a physical thing. Terror sprouts from the skin as crystalline growths that pierce flesh from the inside out. Paranoia manifests as extra eyes that grow across the body, each one searching for threats that exist only in the victim's imagination. Rage turns limbs into weapons, fingers extending into blades, bones jutting through skin to form natural armor, the body reshaping itself into a living engine of violence that attacks anything in its path. But the physical mutations are only part of the horror. The demons come. Entities of pure warp stuff, drawn by the psychic emanations of mortal terror and despair like sharks to blood in water. They pour through the failed Geller field by the hundreds, by the thousands. Bloodletters of Khorne, their brass armor echoing with the screams of the damned. Plague-bearers of Nurgle, spreading disease and corruption with their touch. Demonettes of Slaanesh, offering pleasures and tortures that blur into a single overwhelming sensation. Horrors of Tzeentch, their constantly shifting forms defying rational perception. The slaughter that follows is beyond description. Crew members are torn apart, their bodies used as raw materials for the demons' amusements. Some are possessed, their souls shoved aside as demonic entities take control of their bodies and use them to attack their former companions. Others are transformed into gibbering, mutated things that might technically still be alive, but bear no resemblance to the humans they once were. And the worst part, the absolute worst part of a Geller field failure, is that it doesn't end cleanly. If the ship is lucky, and lucky is a hideously inappropriate word in this context, the field will simply never reactivate. The ship will be lost entirely to the warp, and that will be that. The crew will be dead, or worse, but at least their suffering will have a conclusion. But sometimes, the field reactivates. Perhaps the tech priests manage to repair whatever caused the failure. Perhaps the Geller field simply cycles back on after a temporary disruption. Perhaps the Omnissiah, in his mechanical mercy, grants the ship a reprieve. Regardless of the cause, the bubble of reality re-establishes itself, the warp is pushed back, and the ship continues on its course. What is found when the field stabilizes is the stuff of nightmares. The crew that remains might be fused to the walls, their bodies having partially phased into the ship's structure during the period when physics was not functioning properly. They might still be alive, conscious, aware of their imprisonment, but unable to move or speak or do anything but exist in permanent agony as living components of the ship's architecture. Others might have been transformed in ways that prevent them from dying even when they should. Bodies turned inside out, but still functioning. Organs exposed to the air, blood flowing in patterns that defy biological possibility, yet somehow the victim remains alive and aware. Skin that has become transparent, revealing every internal process, every beat of the heart, every pulse of neural activity visible to anyone who looks. The demons that came through during the field failure might still be present, trapped in real space by the field's reactivation, but without the energy of the warp to sustain them, they begin to decay, to fall apart in ways that are somehow more disturbing than their original forms. And as they decay, they lash out at anything nearby, desperate to return to the Imperium or to inflict one last measure of suffering before they dissipate entirely. Psychological damage among the survivors is universal and catastrophic. Those who lived through a Geller field failure have seen things that human minds were not designed to process. They have felt the touch of the warp on their souls. They have experienced the complete breakdown of reality. Many go completely insane, their minds simply unable to accommodate what they have witnessed. Those who maintain some semblance of sanity often wish they hadn't. They are haunted by memories of what happened during the field failure, memories that might not be entirely memories, as the warp's temporal distortions mean that some of them might still be experiencing aspects of the failure on some level of reality. They wake screaming from nightmares where they are back in that hell. And sometimes those nightmares bleed into waking reality in ways that suggest the distinction between dream and memory has become meaningless. And then there are the ghost ships. Vessels found drifting through the warp or in real space, their Geller fields functioning perfectly. All systems operational, no signs of damage or distress, but no crew, no bodies, no indication of what happened to the thousands of souls who should be aboard. These ships are approached with extreme caution, if they are approached at all. Boarding parties that investigate ghost ships often report deeply unsettling findings. Personal belongings left in the middle of tasks, as if the crew simply vanished mid-action. Food on tables, still fresh despite the passage of time. Recordings of normal ship operations that cut off abruptly without explanation. Sometimes there are clues, a pattern of scratches on a wall that might be claw marks or might be desperate attempts at writing a final message. Blood stains that form patterns suggesting movement or struggle, but no bodies to account for the blood. Equipment damaged in ways that make no sense given the ship's otherwise pristine condition. The theory among those who study such phenomena is that these ships experienced brief Geller field failures, perhaps only seconds or minutes of exposure to the warp. But in those moments, the crew was taken, stolen away to serve purposes in the Imperium that mortal minds cannot comprehend. Whether they are dead, imprisoned, or existing in some state that transcends the boundary between life and death is unknown and perhaps unknowable. Some ghost ships are reclaimed and returned to service after extensive purification rituals and reconsecration, but they are never quite right. Crew members who serve on these vessels report feeling watched, hearing sounds that shouldn't exist, seeing movement in their peripheral vision that vanishes when directly observed. Equipment malfunctions in patterns that defy statistical probability, and sometimes crew members go missing, vanishing from sealed compartments with no explanation. The Imperium's response to Geller field failures and their aftermaths is telling. Rather than investigating thoroughly, rather than trying to understand what happens during these incidents, the standard protocol is purification through destruction. If a ship emerges from the warp showing signs of Geller field failure, it is often destroyed immediately, all hands lost. Better to sacrifice a few thousand souls than risk whatever corruption or contagion they might carry, spreading to other vessels or to populated worlds. This is not punishment, in the conventional sense. Those who experience Geller field failure have committed no crime, broken no law. They are simply victims of technological failure, casualties of the Imperium's dependence on traveling through a hostile dimension using machinery that is barely understood and maintained through prayer as much as technical knowledge. But the suffering is no less real for being unintentional. To experience the complete breakdown of reality, to feel your body and mind transformed by direct exposure to the warp, to be attacked by entities of pure malice and nightmare, this is a fate that rivals any punishment inflicted by malicious design. And the knowledge that it could happen to anyone, at any time, on any of the millions of ships that traverse the warp, adds a layer of existential dread to every journey through the Imperium. Every sailor, every passenger, every crew member knows that they are one mechanical failure away from experiencing hell firsthand. They know that their survival depends on technology they do not understand, prayers they can only hope are heard, and luck that can run out at any moment. This is the horror of Gellerfield failure. Not punishment, but catastrophe. Not judgment, but accident. The terrible price of living in a galaxy where faster-than-light travel requires humanity to brush against a dimension of pure chaos and madness, protected only by a bubble of reality that can collapse at any moment. In the grim darkness of the far future, every journey carries the risk of this fate. Every warp transit is a gamble that the Gellerfield will hold, that the bubble of reality will remain intact, that the ship and all aboard will reach their destination without incident. Most of the time, the gamble pays off. Most ships arrive safely. But for those unfortunate vessels where the field fails, where reality breaks and the warp pours in, what follows is a descent into nightmare that makes conventional punishment seem almost merciful by comparison. At least with punishment, you know why you are suffering. At least there is the possibility of understanding, of meaning, of your pain serving some purpose. But Gellerfield failure offers no such comfort. It is random, meaningless suffering on a cosmic scale. It is proof that the universe is fundamentally hostile to human existence, and that the mechanisms we have created to protect ourselves from that hostility are fragile, fallible, and could fail at any moment. And there is no defense, no preparation, no way to make yourself immune to this fate except to never travel through the warp at all, which in the Imperium, spanning 1,000,000 worlds, is functionally impossible for most of the population. So they travel, and they pray, and they hope that their ship will not be among the unlucky few whose Gellerfields fail. Because if it does, the horrors that await them are beyond anything they can imagine, beyond anything that could be deliberately inflicted as punishment beyond the worst, and nightmares that haunt their sleep. They will face the raw stuff of the warp, and they will break beneath its touch, and they will wish desperately for the mercy of death, even as that mercy is denied them by the very forces that are destroying them. This is not the worst punishment in Warhammer 40,000, because it is not a punishment at all. But it is, perhaps, the most terrifying fate, precisely because it requires no crime, no judgment, no intention. It simply is. A constant possibility hanging over every warp journey, waiting for the moment when technology fails and hell rushes in. Genestealer, cult fate, betrayed by false gods. Among all the fates we have examined, from servitorization to the demoncolaba, there is a particular cruelty in being betrayed by those you trust most completely. To dedicate your life to a cause, to work for generations toward a glorious goal, to sacrifice everything in service to beings you worship as divine, only to discover in the final moments that you were never anything more than disposable tools, that your gods see you as food, that your salvation was always a lie. This is the fate of the Genestealer cult, and it may be the most tragically ironic punishment in all of Warhammer 40,000. It begins with a single Genestealer. These creatures, vanguard organisms of the Tyrannid hive fleets, stow away on Imperial vessels, or lurk within space hulks drifting through the void. They are patient, intelligent, and driven by an instinct to infiltrate and subvert that rivals any human conspiracy. When a Genestealer reaches a populated world, it seeks out victims in the darkness of underhives or the isolation of frontier settlements. The infection is delivered through what the Genestealers themselves call the kiss, though there is nothing affectionate about it. The Genestealer's ovipositor penetrates the victim's skin, injecting genetic material directly into their bloodstream. The victim loses consciousness during the process, their memories of the event suppressed, waking later with only vague recollections of violence or trauma. but the infection has taken root. On a genetic level, the victim has been altered, and when they have children, those children will be hybrids, part human, part tyrannid, and completely devoted to the Genestealer patriarch that infected their parent. The first-generation hybrids are unmistakably alien. Bulbous heads, extra arms, razor-sharp claws. They cannot pass among normal humans without immediate detection. So they hide, skulking in the depths of hive cities or the wilderness beyond settlements, serving the patriarch and spreading the infection to new victims. But with each subsequent generation, the hybrid children become more human in appearance. By the third or fourth generation, they are nearly indistinguishable from baseline humans. They can walk among the population without drawing attention. They can infiltrate organizations, rise to positions of power, recruit new members to the cult that forms around the patriarch. Because that is what develops: a cult, a religious movement that offers hope to the downtrodden, purpose to the lost, and belonging to the rejected. In the brutal hierarchy of imperial society, where the lives of the masses are considered expendable and suffering is the default state of existence, the cult offers something precious: the promise of salvation. The cult's religion is carefully crafted to appeal to imperial sensibilities while hiding its true nature. They speak of the Star Children who will come to deliver humanity from oppression. They preach about transformation and ascension, about a glorious day when the faithful will be lifted up and the corrupt systems of the Imperium will be swept away. They use familiar imagery, aquilas and prayers that sound superficially like imperial devotions, to avoid immediate detection. And their promises resonate. In the darkness of the underhive, where workers labor for rations that barely sustain life, where gangs enforce brutal law, where hope is a luxury most cannot afford, the cult offers community and purpose. They care for their members. They share resources. They promise that suffering has meaning, that the current darkness will give way to glorious light. Generations are born into the cult. Children grow up hearing stories of the Star Children, of the day of ascension, when the faithful will be rewarded for their devotion. They see the patriarch not as a Xenos monster, but as a holy figure. Their psychic conditioning ensuring that where others would see a grotesque alien predator, they perceive beauty and divinity. The cult grows, from dozens to hundreds, to thousands, to millions. They infiltrate the planetary defense forces, the Adeptus Arbites, even the local government. They prepare for the day of ascension, stockpiling weapons, training in secret, ensuring that when the moment comes, they will be ready to overthrow the corrupt imperial authorities and welcome their gods. The patriarch's psychic presence grows stronger with each new generation, each new cult member. It shines in the warp like a beacon, calling out across the void to the hive fleets that travel between the stars. And eventually, after decades or even centuries of preparation, the signal is answered. The hive fleet arrives. The cultists erupt from hiding in coordinated uprisings across the planet. Years of planning pay off as they strike at command centers, disable defenses, assassinate key officials. They fight with fanatical zeal, convinced that they are ushering in a new age, that they are the vanguard of transformation, that their Star Children have come to reward their faith. And they are right about the last part, though not in the way they imagine. The tyrannid organisms descend upon the planet in their billions. Bioships disgorge hordes of hormagaunts and termagants, carnifexes and hive tyrants. The sky darkens with gargoyle swarms. The earth shakes beneath the tread of massive creatures designed for nothing but consumption. The cultists fight alongside these organisms, at least initially. They see the tyrannids not as the monstrous Xenos forms that they are, but as beautiful, perfect beings. Their psychic conditioning ensures that they perceive the razor-edged claws and acid-dripping maws as instruments of divine judgment. They march into battle singing hymns of devotion, convinced that they are finally living out their purpose. But then, as the planet's defenses crumble, as the last resistance is crushed, something changes. The psychic influence of the patriarch begins to fade. The hive mind, that vast gestalt consciousness of the tyrannid race, subsumes the patriarch into its greater whole. The protective psychic conditioning that made the cultists see tyrannids as holy figures begins to dissolve. And the cultists see, truly see, for the first time. They see that the Star Children are not divine saviors, but alien monsters. They see that the beautiful forms they worshipped are creatures of chitin and fang, utterly inhuman, utterly indifferent to human concepts of meaning or purpose. They see that the hive fleet has come not to liberate them, but to consume them. The realization hits in waves across the surviving cult population. Imagine dedicating your entire life to a cause. Imagine that your parents dedicated their lives to it, that your grandparents and great-grandparents did the same. Imagine that you have sacrificed everything, career, relationships, safety, comfort, in service to this faith. Imagine that you have killed for it, died for it, structured every aspect of your existence around the belief that you were serving a higher purpose. Now imagine discovering, in a single moment of terrible clarity, that it was all a lie. The psychic shock of this realization is devastating enough on its own. Many cultists simply collapse, their minds unable to process the magnitude of the betrayal. But they do not have the luxury of processing their trauma, because the tyrannids are still there, and now they are hungry. The patriarch and the pure-strain Genestealers turn on the cult without hesitation. These creatures that the cultists worshipped, that they considered family, that they defended and nurtured through generations, they begin the slaughter with mechanical efficiency. The cultists try to flee. They run through streets they helped capture, past barricades they erected, over ground they bled to secure. Behind them, the tyrannids come, not with malice or anger or any emotion that humans could recognize, simply with hunger. Some cultists are herded toward the reclamation pools, vast organic structures where tyrannid feeder organisms like rippers process all biological matter into a nutrient-rich soup that can be consumed by the hive fleet. They walk into these pools in a daze, blank-faced, their minds shattered by the betrayal. The last thing many experience is the sensation of being dissolved alive, broken down into component molecules to feed the fleet that they spent their lives preparing the planet for. Others are seized by tyrannid organisms and simply consumed on the spot. Digested by powerful acids, their biomass absorbed directly into the creatures that devour them. Some remain conscious during parts of this process, experiencing the horror of feeling their bodies being broken down and assimilated. The lucky ones, and luck is a cruelly inappropriate term here, are killed quickly in the fighting. A talon through the heart, a spray of bioacid, a swarm of rippers that strip flesh from bone in seconds. These deaths are still terrifying, still agonizing, but at least they end. At least there is a conclusion. The truly unfortunate are those who survive the initial consumption phase. Some escape on refugee ships, fleeing the planet as the tyrannids complete their harvest. They carry the genetic infection with them to new worlds, and within their bodies or in their children, the cycle begins again. New generations will be born infected. New cults will form. New believers will dedicate their lives to false gods who see them only as food. There are rare instances where cult members are aware of their ultimate fate and accept it. These individuals have a kind of religious fatalism that acknowledges that they are meant to be consumed, that their sacrifice feeds the Star Children, and that this is the highest honor they can achieve. Whether this knowledge makes their fate better or worse is debatable. Is it more tragic to die believing a lie, or to die knowing the horrible truth and accepting it anyway? The psychological torture of the Genestealer Cult's fate extends beyond just the final betrayal. Consider the life of a cult member who was born into the faith. They grew up believing they were special, chosen, destined for something greater than the grinding existence of the average imperial citizen. Every hardship they endured was given meaning by their faith. Every sacrifice made sense as preparation for the glorious day of ascension. Their entire framework for understanding the universe was built on this foundation. And then, in a single traumatic moment, that foundation crumbles. Everything they believed was revealed as manipulation. Every choice they made was based on false information. The patriarch they worshipped as a spiritual leader was using them as a psychic beacon to call in an alien invasion. The star children they longed to meet wanted only to eat them. The existential horror of this realization cannot be overstated. It is a form of psychological destruction that rivals any physical torture. To learn that your entire life has been meaningless, that the gods you worshipped never cared for you, that you were always just food waiting to be harvested. This is a violation of the soul that leaves scars no surgeon could hope to repair. And the ultimate irony, from the Imperium's perspective, the cultists deserve their fate. They are heretics, Xenos worshippers, traitors who betrayed humanity in service to alien gods. The fact that they were genetically conditioned to this betrayal, that they never really had a choice, that their worship was the result of biological and psychic manipulation. None of this matters in imperial justice. They are guilty, and their consumption by the Tyranids is seen as appropriate judgment. But we who observe from outside the setting can see the tragedy for what it is. These are victims being punished for the crime of being victimized. They were infected through no fault of their own, conditioned to worship through psychic manipulation, and then condemned both for following that conditioning and for being betrayed by it. The Genestealer cult represents a unique form of punishment because it is self-inflicted through manipulation. The cultists participate enthusiastically in creating the conditions for their own destruction. They work toward their doom with dedication and zeal, and when that doom arrives, they experience both the physical horror of being consumed and the psychological devastation of realizing they were duped. This is punishment through betrayal, suffering through revelation, death preceded by the destruction of everything that gave life meaning. It is perhaps not the most physically agonizing fate in Warhammer 40,000, but it may be among the most psychologically cruel. And across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, the cycle continues. New infections spreading, new cults forming, new generations being born into a faith that will ultimately devour them. The Tyranids advance, world by world, fed by the very populations that welcome them as saviors. In the grim darkness of the far future, even hope is a weapon wielded by those who would destroy you. Even faith can be twisted into a tool of annihilation, and sometimes the worst fate is not to have suffering inflicted upon you by enemies, but to willingly embrace the architects of your own destruction, worshipping them as gods until the moment they reveal themselves as the monsters they always were. Chaos Dreadnought. Internment. Madness in a metal tomb. We have examined the fate of the faithful betrayed and the innocent transformed. Now we turn to a punishment that falls upon warriors, upon those who once stood among humanity's greatest defenders before falling to chaos. The irony of their fate is acute. Where loyal Space Marines view Dreadnought internment as the highest honor, a chance to serve the Emperor beyond death, their Chaos counterparts know it for the curse it truly is. In the Imperium, when a Space Marine suffers injuries so catastrophic that even their enhanced biology cannot preserve them, but their spirit and mind remain intact, they are offered a choice: honorable death or internment within a Dreadnought. Most choose internment. They will serve their chapter for centuries or even millennia, a living link to the chapter's past, a repository of wisdom and combat experience, honored by their brothers and maintained with reverent care by the chapter's tech priests. But in the service of chaos, this process becomes something entirely different. Internment in what is now called a Hellbrute is not an honor offered to worthy veterans. It is a punishment inflicted on failures, on rivals, on those who have displeased their warlords, or simply on wounded space marines who have the misfortune to be available when a Hellbrute chassis needs filling. The process of creating a Hellbrute, particularly among the Thousand Sons and other sorceress legions, is a deliberate horror show. The condemned space marine undergoes a series of trials designed to bind their soul to the Hellbrute systems through ritual magic and dark science. These are not the respectful rites of the loyalist chapters, but torturous ordeals that break the subject's will and prepare them for the violation to come. Then comes the flensing. The space marine's body is subjected to warp flame, not ordinary fire, but the raw stuff of the immaterium made manifest. This unnatural flame burns away flesh, leaving only organs, bones, and nerve fibers. The pain is beyond description. Warp flame does not simply destroy tissue, it burns the soul itself, leaving psychic scars that will never heal. And the condemned remains conscious throughout. This is not an oversight or an unavoidable side effect. It is deliberate. The Chaos Sorcerers and Dark Mechanicum Tech Priests who perform this procedure want the subject to be aware, to understand what is being done to them, to experience every moment of their transformation from warrior to weapon. The charred, screaming remnant, barely recognizable as human, or even as a once mighty Astartes, is placed within an amniotic sac. This organic cocoon is then inserted into the heart of the Hellbrute chassis. The machine's systems activate immediately, neural interfaces piercing the victim's brain, artificial limbs replacing those that were destroyed, life support systems forcing their body to continue functioning long past the point where death should have claimed them. But the Hellbrute's machine spirit is not the carefully maintained and honored consciousness of an Imperium dreadnought. It is a thing of malevolence and madness, often already possessed by demonic entities before the pilot is installed. The moment the connection is established, the pilot's consciousness is assaulted by the machine's corrupted spirit, by whispers from the warp, by sensations and impulses that belong to something fundamentally inhuman. The psychological torment begins immediately and never truly ends. Unlike loyalist dreadnoughts, which can be maintained in a state of dreamless sleep between battles, Hellbrute pilots remain aware when their sarcophagi are disconnected from the chassis. They hang in storage chambers, surrounded by warding runes that barely contain the demonic presences that constantly claw at the edges of their consciousness. These storage periods are themselves a form of torture. Imagine being unable to move, to see, to interact with the world in any way. You exist only as a consciousness trapped in a failing body, kept alive by machinery you can hear humming around you but cannot control. And always, always there are the voices. Demons trying to break through the wards. The corrupted machine spirit of the Hellbrute attempting to assert control even when disconnected. Your own thoughts fragmenting and reforming in patterns that no longer feel entirely your own. Days pass, weeks, months. Time loses meaning in the darkness. You cannot sleep because the life support systems will not allow it. You cannot go mad and escape into insanity because the very systems keeping you alive also maintain your mind's functionality. All you can do is exist and wait and slowly feel your sanity eroding like a cliff face under endless waves. When the Hellbrute is activated for battle, the pilot experiences a horrifying fusion with the machine. Your consciousness expands to fill the chassis, and suddenly you can move again. But the body you inhabit is wrong in ways that cause immediate revulsion. Arms that end in weapons rather than hands. Sensors that feed you information in formats your human brain was never designed to process. A body that towers over your former battle brothers but feels simultaneously too large and too confining. And the rage, oh the rage that floods through you when the Hellbrute's weapons systems come online. It is not your rage, not entirely. It is the accumulated fury of the machine spirit, the bloodlust of any demons that have taken residence in your new form. and your own desperation and hatred, given strength by the Hellbrute's systems. You are a hurricane of anger and madness, imprisoned in a body of corrupted metal and demon-haunted machinery. The Hellbrute charges into battle with mindless fury. You kill everything in your path, enemies, allies, it scarcely matters. The distinction blurs in the haze of violence and chemical stimulation. Your weapons tear through armor and flesh with equal ease. You feel every impact, every kill, but the sensations are filtered through layers of mechanical interface and psychic corruption until they bear little resemblance to the clean violence of your previous existence as a space marine. And sometimes, in moments of terrible clarity amid the slaughter, you remember what you were. You remember the honor of serving in your legion before the fall. You remember brothers in arms who fought beside you with discipline and purpose. You remember being human, being whole, being something other than this nightmare fusion of flesh and metal, driven by uncontrollable rage. Those moments of clarity are perhaps the worst part of all. To remember what you have lost, to understand what you have become, and to know that there is no going back, no redemption, no escape, except through destruction so complete that not even your soul will remain. This is a torment that physical pain cannot match. The sonic dreadnoughts of the Emperors. Children experience a unique variation of this torture. Slaanesh's followers live for sensation, for the pursuit of pleasure and pain in their most extreme forms. To be locked in a metal shell that dulls all sensation is the ultimate punishment for a devotee of the Dark Prince. These pilots feel nothing. The sonic weapons they wield obliterate their enemies with sound that can rupture organs and shatter bone, but the pilot experiences none of it. No pleasure, no pain, just the distant, muted knowledge that destruction is occurring somewhere beyond the shell that imprisons them. For a Slaaneshi, this sensory deprivation is a hell beyond imagining. The World Eater's Hellbrutes are driven mad by rage implants, similar to the butcher's nails that plague their flesh and blood brothers. But where a mortal space marine might eventually die from the neural damage these implants cause, the Hellbrute systems keep its pilot alive and conscious through levels of pain and aggression that would kill any unaugmented being. The pilot exists in a state of perpetual, chemically enhanced fury, unable to calm, unable to think clearly, unable to do anything but rage against the prison of their own body. The oldest Hellbrutes have been imprisoned for thousands of years. Some date back to the Horus heresy itself, ancient warriors who fell in battle against their former brothers and were honored with internment by their new Chaos Masters. These ancient ones are utterly mad, their personalities fragmented into dozens of contradictory impulses and voices. They might speak with the voice of the original pilot, or the machine spirit, or one of the demons that has taken up residence in their systems. Sometimes all three speak at once, creating a cacophony of insanity that disturbs even other Chaos Space Marines. Between battles, when the amniotic sac containing their ruined body is hung in the deep halls of their warband's fortress or ship, these ancients exist in a state that cannot properly be called life or death. They are conscious of the demons that press against the wards surrounding them. They can hear, faintly, the sounds of the ship or fortress. They can feel their body slowly degrading, systems failing one by one, only to be repaired or replaced by dark mechanicum tech priests who care nothing for their suffering. Some Hellbrute pilots have been known to attack their own forces during battle, so consumed by rage and madness that they make no distinction between friend and foe. Their handlers chain them like beasts when not in active combat, positioning them in defensive emplacements or storage bays where their weapons can be aimed away from friendly forces. The chains are practical, not symbolic. A Hellbrute in the grip of full fury will absolutely attempt to destroy everything around it if given the opportunity. The creation of new Hellbrutes continues unabated in the Eye of Terror and other chaos-controlled regions. Warpsmiths produce them in grotesque forges, using techniques that combine ancient technology with demonic rituals. The chassis is deliberately designed to cause suffering to its pilot. The amniotic sac is uncomfortable. The neural interface is painful. The life support systems maintained at levels just barely sufficient to keep the pilot alive. And always, the pilot knows that this is their existence now and forever. There is no retirement, no honorable end to service, no peaceful death awaiting them. They will be used in battle after battle, their sanity slowly eroding, their original personality fragmenting into madness, until finally some enemy blow is powerful enough to breach their armor and grant them the obliteration they have come to crave. The contrast with loyalist dreadnoughts could not be more stark. Those honored ancients serve by choice, are maintained with reverence, sleep peacefully between battles, and are consulted for their wisdom and experience. They are living legends, bridges to their chapters past, sources of inspiration for younger battle brothers. The Hellbrute is none of these things. It is a punishment, a prison, a demonstration that even in service to chaos, there are fates worse than death. The pilot receives no honor, no reverence, only the grudging acknowledgement that they remain useful as a weapon. They are not consulted for wisdom because their madness makes any advice suspect. They inspire not loyalty, but fear, and even their fellow Chaos Marines tend to avoid them when possible. This is the punishment of Chaos Dreadnought internment. To be transformed from a proud warrior into a screaming engine of destruction, to lose your body to flame and your mind to madness, to exist in darkness, punctuated only by brief explosions of violence that you can barely control. To know that every activation might be the one where you finally lose the last shred of yourself to the rage and the machine and the demons, becoming something that was once human, but is now simply a weapon that remembers, dimly and with growing confusion, what it felt like to be a person. And unlike many of the punishments we have examined, this one can last for thousands of years. Millennia of intermittent consciousness, each awakening bringing fresh torment, each battle eroding what remains of your identity, each return to storage plunging you back into isolation and madness. Generation after generation of chaos, Space Marines will use you as a weapon, and you will serve them because you have no choice, and you will hate them and yourself and the universe that has condemned you to this existence. This is what it means to be a Hellbrute. This is the price of failure or disfavor in service to the ruinous powers. This is the fate that awaits those who are too useful to discard, but too damaged to serve as they once did. This is immortality as curse rather than blessing, eternal existence in the service of beings who care nothing for your suffering and everything for your continued utility as a weapon of war.
Conclusion. The philosophy of suffering. We have journeyed through the darkest corners of the Warhammer 40,000 universe, examining punishments and fates that range from the methodical cruelty of servitorization to the existential horror of Gellerfield failure, from the betrayal of the Genestealer Cultists to the eternal madness of the Hellbrute. Each represents a unique form of suffering, a distinct manifestation of the galaxy's fundamental cruelty. But what do these punishments tell us about the nature of the 40k universe itself? They reveal a galaxy where suffering is not an aberration, but a fundamental principle of existence. The Imperium does not inflict these punishments reluctantly or with regret. They are built into the very structure of its society, codified in law, justified by theology, and accepted as necessary by the trillions who live under Imperial rule. The alternative, they are told, is extinction, and perhaps they are right. The Xenos races offer no better alternatives. The Tyranids see all life as merely food to be consumed. The Dark Eldar torture, because they must, because Slaanesh will claim their souls if they do not feed on the suffering of others. Even the supposedly enlightened Tau enforce conformity through methods that might be called brainwashing in any other context. And chaos? Chaos is honest, at least. It makes no pretense of justice or necessity. It inflicts suffering because suffering is power, because pain and despair feed the dark gods, because the screams of the tortured are music to entities that exist beyond mortal comprehension. What we see across all these punishments is the complete devaluation of the individual. You are not a person with rights, with dignity, with inherent worth. You are a resource to be used, a tool to be employed, a body to be expended in service to powers that will never acknowledge your sacrifice or mourn your loss. Your suffering means nothing to the machinery of the Imperium or to its enemies. You are simply one of trillions, and your pain is an acceptable price for someone else's goals. This is the true horror of Warhammer 40,000. Not any single punishment, but the systematic erasure of human value that makes all these punishments possible. In a universe where life is cheap and death is cheaper still, where this is the true horror of Warhammer 40,000. Not any single punishment, but the systematic erasure of human value that makes all these punishments possible. In a universe where life is cheap and death is cheaper still, where billions can be sacrificed without a second thought, these extreme punishments become not just possible, but inevitable. The servitor, shambling through a starship corridor, is not seen as a tragedy, but as a practical solution to a labor problem. The arco-flagellant screaming as it charges into enemy fire is not a victim, but a weapon that happens to be partly biological. The women used as homunculaba are not people with agency and dignity, but raw materials in a manufacturing process. The cultist realizing their gods only want to eat them is not worthy of sympathy because they were heretics, and heretics deserve whatever fate befalls them. This systematic dehumanization is what allows these punishments to exist and to be accepted by the societies that employ them. If you can convince yourself that the victim is not really a person, or if they are a person who deserves whatever is being done to them, then any level of cruelty becomes justifiable. And yet, the 40k universe asks us to engage with these horrors in a specific way. We are meant to see the Imperium as necessary, even if brutal. We are meant to understand that in a galaxy of literal demons and alien invasions bent on consuming all life, extreme measures are required for survival. The grimdark setting presents itself as a universe where conventional morality has become a luxury humanity can no longer afford. This is where the setting becomes truly interesting as a piece of speculative fiction. It forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about necessity and morality, about whether the ends can ever truly justify the means, about how far a society can go in the name of survival before it becomes something not worth saving. Consider the servitor. Yes, it is a horrific fate to have your mind wiped and your body converted into a biological robot. But the Imperium genuinely needs workers for tasks that are too dangerous or complex for simple machines, and their prohibition against artificial intelligence makes servitors a practical necessity. Does that utility justify the horror? The setting leaves that question deliberately ambiguous. Or consider the penal legions. These are criminals, people who have committed crimes against imperial law. Should they be executed, allowed to waste away in prisons? Or is it more pragmatic to give them a chance at redemption through service, even if that service is almost certainly fatal? The Imperium would argue that using them as soldiers at least gives their deaths meaning, makes their final acts serve humanity's survival. Even the homunculaba, that ultimate expression of depravity, serves a practical purpose within the logic of the setting. The Iron Warriors needed a way to create new Chaos Marines quickly. Traditional methods were unavailable to them. From a purely pragmatic standpoint, the homunculaba was an effective solution to their recruitment problem. The fact that it was monstrous did not make it less functional. This is what makes Warhammer 40,000 so compelling and so disturbing. It presents a universe where the most horrific actions can be justified by practical necessity, where there are no good choices, only less terrible ones, where the alternative to accepting these punishments might genuinely be extinction. But we, as observers from outside the setting,
can see what those within it cannot or will not acknowledge. That a civilization which requires such extreme cruelty to survive has perhaps already lost what makes survival worthwhile. That a species which reduces its own members to servitors and weapons and biological manufacturing equipment has betrayed something fundamental about what it means to be human. The punishments we have examined serve multiple functions within the setting. They demonstrate the brutal pragmatism of imperial society. They provide background horror that gives weight to the grim darkness of the setting's tagline. They create dramatic tension and stakes for characters who know that failure might result in fates worse than death. And they force both characters and readers to confront questions about morality, necessity, and the price of survival. Each punishment reveals something different about the nature of suffering in the 41st millennium. Servitorization shows us how humans can be reduced to components, their individuality erased in service to efficiency. Arco-flagellation demonstrates how even punishment can be wrapped in the language of redemption and given theological justification. The penitent engine reveals the sadism that lurks beneath the ecclesiarchy's rhetoric of faith and sacrifice. The penal legions and coffin detail remind us that even in a galaxy of superhumans and miracles, regular humans still die in droves. Their deaths considered so meaningless that they can be sent to carry radioactive fuel cells with less ceremony than one might give to changing a light bulb. The Demonculaba stands as proof that there is no depth of depravity to which those seeking power will not sink, no violation they will not commit if it serves their goals. Geller field failure shows us that sometimes the universe itself is the enemy, that no amount of faith or technology can truly protect us from the fundamental hostility of reality. The fate of Genestealer cultists demonstrates that even hope and faith can be twisted into weapons, that belief itself can become a tool of destruction. And the Chaos Dreadnought reminds us that immortality is not always a blessing, that existence can become a burden so heavy that death seems like a mercy rather than a defeat. What unites all these punishments is their duration and their denial of mercy. Death would be simple, quick, final. But these punishments extend suffering across time, transforming what could be a moment of pain into years or decades or centuries of torment. They trap their victims in states between life and death, where the body endures but the soul is slowly destroyed, and they are utterly without mercy. There is no early release for good behavior, no pardon or parole, no possibility of reprieve. Once you have been sentenced to become a servitor, or interred in a hellbrute, or infected by a genestealer, your fate is sealed. You will endure whatever follows until your body fails completely, or until death claims you in some other way. The cruelty is not a bug, but a feature, not an unfortunate side effect, but the entire point. This lack of mercy extends to the victim's inability to find meaning in their suffering. A soldier who dies in battle can at least believe they died for something, for the Emperor, for their comrades, for humanity's survival. But a servitor who has had their mind erased cannot find meaning in their existence because they no longer possess the cognitive capacity to understand the concept of meaning. An arco-flagellant in the grip of combat drugs cannot take comfort in serving a higher purpose because their consciousness has been reduced to pure, chemically induced aggression. The Genestealer cultist, who realizes their gods were lies, cannot retroactively give meaning to their life of sacrifice because the revelation destroys the framework that made that sacrifice meaningful. The hellbrute pilot descending into madness cannot find purpose in their continued service because they are no longer coherent enough to understand purpose as a concept. This denial of meaning is perhaps the cruelest aspect of these punishments. Humans are meaning-making creatures. We endure terrible hardships if we believe those hardships serve a purpose, if we can tell ourselves a story about why our suffering matters. But these punishments strip away even that comfort. They reduce suffering to its purest form, pain without purpose, torment without transcendence, existence as nothing more than an extended process of destruction. And yet, the Imperium and its enemies persist in inflicting these punishments. Not because they are sadists who enjoy cruelty for its own sake, though certainly some individuals do, but because the system they operate within has normalized this level of violence. When you process billions of criminals, when you need millions of servitors, when you must fill endless quotas of penal legionnaires, the individual cases blur together. The servitor you pass in the corridor was once a person with hopes and dreams, but you will never know their story. The arco-flagellant, charging into enemy fire, was once someone's child, but their identity has been erased along with their memories. This industrialization of suffering, this bureaucratization of cruelty, is what allows these punishments to continue. No single person bears responsibility for any individual case. The judge who sentences someone to servitorization does not personally perform the lobotomy. The tech priest who performs the lobotomy does not make the decision about where the servitor will be deployed. The ship captain who uses the servitor never meets the judge who sentenced them. Responsibility is diffused across so many layers of bureaucracy that no one has to confront the full horror of what they are participating in. This is how ordinary people in the Imperium justify these practices to themselves. I am just doing my job. I am just following orders. I am just one small part of a vast machine. If I do not do this, someone else will. The alternative would be worse, and perhaps most insidiously, they deserve it, whatever it is, and whatever they did to earn it. These rationalizations allow the horrors to continue, generation after generation, world after world, victim after victim. The system perpetuates itself because everyone involved has a reason to avoid questioning it. The powerful benefit from it directly. The masses accept it because they have been taught that this is simply how the universe works, that there is no alternative, that questioning the system itself is heresy, punishable by the very fates we have been discussing. And so the wheel turns. More criminals are sentenced, more servitors are created, more cultists are infected, more ships experience Geller field failures, more Chaos Marines are interred in Hellbrutes. The suffering continues because it has always continued, because no one with the power to stop it has sufficient motivation to do so, because the inertia of a civilization spanning 1 million worlds is too great to be redirected by any individual or group. This is the ultimate punishment of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Not any specific fate that might befall an individual, but the knowledge that you exist in a system that has normalized such cruelty, that treats these horrors as acceptable, that will continue grinding forward regardless of how many victims it creates. You might escape any particular punishment through luck or skill or the intervention of others, but you cannot escape the system that makes such punishments possible, that ensures they will be inflicted on someone, somewhere, at every moment of every day across the entire galaxy. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But more than that, there is systematic, institutionalized cruelty on a scale that defies comprehension. There is suffering as policy, pain as punishment, and the complete negation of individual human dignity in service to abstract concepts like duty, order, and survival. The worst punishment in Warhammer 40,000 is not any single fate we have examined. It is being born into this universe at all, existing in a galaxy where these fates are possible, where they happen to millions every day, where they will continue happening long after you are dust and forgotten. It is living in a reality where the best you can hope for is to avoid the worst punishments, to live your life in the narrow space between damnation and destruction, knowing that at any moment, 1,000 different forces could conspire to drag you down into one of these hells. This is what makes Warhammer 40,000 such an effective grimdark setting. It does not simply present individual horrors, but creates an entire universe where such horrors are woven into the fabric of existence. It shows us humanity at its most desperate and its most cruel, fighting for survival with methods that might make extinction seem preferable. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about what societies might become when pushed to their absolute limits. And perhaps, if we are being honest with ourselves, it reflects something about our own world. The 40k universe exaggerates everything to mythic proportions, but the underlying mechanisms, the bureaucratization of violence, the diffusion of responsibility, the rationalization of cruelty, the sacrifice of individuals to abstract systems, these are not purely fictional. They exist in our reality too, just at a smaller scale and with less dramatic manifestations. The punishments of Warhammer 40,000 serve as a dark mirror, reflecting back at us the question of how far we might go in the name of survival, order, or efficiency. They ask us to consider where we would draw lines, what we would refuse to accept even if it meant accepting defeat. They challenge us to think about the value we place on human dignity and individual rights when those values conflict with practical necessity. These are not comfortable questions. But then, Warhammer 40,000 was never meant to be comfortable. It is a setting that revels in its grim darkness, that pushes cruelty to its logical extremes, that shows us the very worst possibilities of human civilization stretched across the stars. The punishments we have examined are not aberrations within that setting, but expressions of its core themes. That survival requires sacrifice, that order requires violence, that in the grim darkness of the far future, mercy is a luxury that humanity can no longer afford. Whether you accept these premises or reject them is ultimately up to you as an individual engaging with the fiction. But there is no denying the power and effectiveness with which Warhammer 40,000 has created a universe where these horrors feel inevitable, where these punishments seem grimly logical given the setting's premises, where the worst fates imaginable become just another day in the Imperium of Man. The Dark Eldar, Masters of Torment. Before we conclude our exploration, we would be remiss not to address one of the galaxy's most dedicated practitioners of punishment as an art form. The Dark Eldar, or Drukhari, have refined torture to a level that makes even the Imperium's cruelties seem crude by comparison. But what makes their practices particularly noteworthy is not merely their sadism, but the existential necessity that drives it. The Drukhari are trapped in a terrible bargain with the Chaos god Slaanesh. When their ancient civilization fell and gave birth to the Dark Prince through their own excessive hedonism, they condemned themselves and all their descendants to an eternity of having their souls slowly drained by She Who Thirsts. The only way they have found to temporarily stave off this fate is to feed Slaanesh not with their own suffering, but with the suffering of others. Every moment of pain they inflict, every scream they extract from their victims, briefly sates the Dark God's hunger and extends their own lives. This is not cruelty for pleasure alone, though many Drukhari have come to enjoy their work, but cruelty for survival. They torture because they must, because the alternative is to have their souls consumed by Slaanesh the moment they die. This necessity has made them experts in prolonging suffering. Where the Imperium might simply execute a prisoner or transform them into a servitor, the Dark Eldar view such waste as unforgivable. Every victim represents potential sustenance, and they have developed techniques to extract maximum suffering while keeping their victims alive as long as possible. The Homunculi, the master torturers and flesh crafters of Comora, can keep a subject alive and conscious through procedures that would kill any normal being a dozen times over. They have techniques to regenerate damaged tissue, to stimulate pain receptors far beyond their normal sensitivity, to alter perception so that seconds feel like hours and hours feel like years. They can transform victims into grotesque forms designed specifically to maximize suffering, all while ensuring that the consciousness remains intact and aware of every change. A prisoner of the Dark Eldar might spend subjective centuries being tortured, their body rebuilt again and again after each session of torment, their mind kept sharp and aware so that the pain never fades into numbness or madness. They might be transformed into living furniture, conscious and aware, but unable to move or speak or do anything but exist as decoration in some archon's palace. They might be turned into grotesques, hulking monsters whose minds remain human even as their bodies become weapons of war. The Dark Eldar raid, imperial worlds and Xeno settlements specifically to acquire subjects for their tortures. Entire populations might be dragged back to Commorragh in chains, sorted by the quality of their screams and their capacity for suffering. The best victims, those who can endure the most pain while maintaining their sanity, are prized beyond measure, kept alive for decades or centuries as sources of the psychic energy that keeps the Drukhari from Slaanesh's grasp. What makes this particularly insidious is that the Dark Eldar have no choice. They did not choose to be born into this curse. They did not personally commit the excesses that birthed Slaanesh. They are victims of their ancestors' crimes, condemned to inflict suffering on others to avoid their own damnation. This does not make their actions less horrific, but it adds a layer of tragedy to their cruelty. From the perspective of those captured by Dark Eldar raiders, none of this philosophical complexity matters. What matters is that they are being subjected to tortures refined over 10,000 years by a species that views pain as both art form and survival mechanism. They will endure horrors that make imperial punishment seem almost merciful by comparison, and they will endure them for as long as the Drukhari can keep them alive and aware, extracted every drop of suffering possible before finally allowing them the mercy of death. The Dark Eldar remind us that in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, there is always something worse. The Imperium's punishments are brutal, but they at least claim some higher purpose: order, redemption, necessity. Chaos inflicts suffering to feed the Dark Gods, or simply because it can. But the Dark Eldar have turned torture into a lifestyle, a culture, a necessity for their continued existence. To be captured by Dark Eldar is perhaps the single worst fate that can befall any being in the galaxy. You will not be granted the mercy of mind-wiping like a servitor. You will not be given combat drugs that dull the pain like an arcoflagellant. You will not even have the cold comfort of serving some purpose greater than yourself. You will simply suffer, for as long as they can make you suffer, because your agony is what keeps them alive. This is the ultimate expression of the galaxy's cruelty, that suffering itself has become a resource, that pain is currency, that the screams of the tortured have economic value in the twisted markets of Commorragh. The Dark Eldar have transformed punishment from a means to an end into an end in itself, refined it into high art, and built an entire civilization around the extraction and consumption of anguish. Final thoughts. The value of hope. We have explored servitorization and arcoflagellation, penitent engines and penal legions, the Demonculaba and Geller field failures, Genestealer cults and chaos dreadnoughts, and the refined tortures of the Dark Eldar. We have seen suffering in countless forms, punishments that strip away dignity and humanity, fates that make death seem preferable to continued existence. And yet, the Warhammer 40,000 universe is not entirely without hope. Even in the darkest corners of this grimdark setting, there are glimmers of defiance, moments of humanity that persist despite overwhelming cruelty. The unfleshed, those failed products of the Demonculaba, who survived when they should have died, built a shrine to the Emperor from scrap and worshipped with a devotion that shamed many loyal citizens. Despite everything done to them, despite having their humanity literally stripped away and replaced with monstrous forms, they retained enough of their souls to reach for something greater than themselves. The rare servitor who retains fragments of consciousness and tries to communicate, to warn others, to maintain some connection to the person they once were. They demonstrate that the human spirit can persist even when the mind has been deliberately broken and the body transformed into a tool.
the penal legionnaire who survives battle after battle, who earns a kind of savage glory through sheer refusal to die, who becomes a legend among their fellow condemned. They prove that even those society has deemed expendable can achieve a form of greatness. Even among the Genestealer cultists, there are those who in their final moments recognize the betrayal and choose to die fighting rather than submitting to consumption. That moment of clarity, that final act of defiance against the false gods who manipulated them, represents a kind of redemption, even as it comes too late to save them. These moments do not negate the horror. They do not make the punishments acceptable or the suffering justified. But they remind us that even in the grim darkness of the far future, humanity, in all its flawed, stubborn, tragic glory, finds ways to persist, to hope, to rage against the dying of the light, even when that rage changes nothing. This is perhaps the most important message of Warhammer 40,000, that nihilism is not the same as grim darkness. The setting shows us the very worst of what humanity might become, the depths to which we might sink in pursuit of survival. But it also shows us that even in those depths, sparks of genuine humanity can persist. That even when stripped of everything that makes life worth living, some individuals find the strength to maintain their dignity, their compassion, their refusal to surrender to the darkness. The worst punishments in Warhammer 40,000 are terrible precisely because they fail to completely destroy the human spirit, even as they do everything possible to achieve that destruction. A servitor that retains awareness is tragic because a spark of the person remains, trapped and unable to express itself. A hellbrute pilot descending into madness is horrifying because we see the erosion of a once proud warrior, measure by measure, rather than an instant transformation. If these punishments completely and instantly obliterated their victims' humanity, they would be less effective as horror. What makes them truly disturbing is the slow process, the gradual degradation, the moments of clarity that allow the victim to understand what has been done to them. The horror comes from the persistence of consciousness in circumstances where consciousness itself becomes a curse. And this brings us to the final truth about these punishments. They are effective not because of their physical brutality, but because of how they violate the fundamental human need for meaning and dignity. We can endure tremendous physical pain if we believe it serves a purpose. We can accept death if we think our sacrifice matters. But to suffer without meaning, to have our dignity stripped away, to be transformed from a person into an object, this is the unbearable core of these punishments. The Imperium and its enemies have perfected the art of existential violation, of taking everything that makes existence bearable and systematically destroying it while keeping the victim alive and aware. This is cruelty elevated to a fundamental principle of their civilizations. This is punishment as cosmic horror, suffering as the default state of existence. Closing words. Thank you for joining me on this dark journey through the worst punishments of Warhammer 40,000. We have explored fates that would make even the most hardened souls recoil, examined cruelties that stretch the boundaries of imagination, and witnessed the systematic destruction of human dignity on a galactic scale. These punishments serve multiple purposes within the setting. They create atmosphere and stakes. They demonstrate the brutal pragmatism of imperial society and the sadism of its enemies. They force characters and readers alike to confront uncomfortable questions about necessity, morality, and the price of survival. But more than that, they remind us why we are drawn to grimdark fiction in the first place. Not because we enjoy suffering, but because we want to see how the human spirit responds when pushed to its absolute limits. We want to see whether hope can persist in the face of overwhelming darkness, whether dignity can be maintained when everything else has been stripped away, whether meaning can be found even in the most meaningless suffering. The answer if we are being honest, is complex. Some individuals break completely under these punishments. Some find ways to persist, to maintain fragments of their humanity against all odds. Some discover strength they never knew they possessed, and some are simply destroyed, their stories ending not in triumph or even in tragic glory, but in the simple, brutal fact of their obliteration. This is what makes Warhammer 40,000 such a compelling and disturbing setting. It does not offer easy answers or comfortable moral certainties. It presents a universe where the best choice might still be terrible, where survival requires compromises that destroy the soul, where every victory comes at a cost that makes you question whether the victory was worth it. The worst punishments in Warhammer 40,000 are terrible, but they are also, in a perverse way, honest. They strip away the comfortable illusions we tell ourselves about civilization and progress and the value of human life. They show us what humans might become when all restraints are removed, when survival becomes the only goal, when the question, "How far would you go?" is answered with, "As far as necessary." Whether this honesty is valuable or simply nihilistic is something each person must decide for themselves. But there is no denying that these punishments, these fates, these systematic cruelties achieve their purpose within the fiction. They create a universe that feels genuinely dangerous, where characters we care about face stakes that extend beyond simple death, where failure means not just losing, but being transformed into something that makes losing seem preferable. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But more than that, there is suffering as a fundamental principle of existence. There is cruelty baked into the structure of civilization. There is no escape, no salvation, no possibility of a better tomorrow. There is only the grinding present, stretching across centuries and millennia, consuming souls by the billion, transforming individuals into statistics and people into resources. This is Warhammer 40,000. This is the setting that asks us to confront the very worst possibilities of human civilization. These are the worst punishments in that universe, not because they are the most physically painful, though many certainly are, but because they represent the complete negation of human value, the systematic destruction of everything that makes life worth living. If you found this exploration valuable, disturbing, or thought-provoking, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that like button. Your support helps me continue creating content that explores the depths of Warhammer 40,000 lore, examining the grimdark setting with the seriousness and detail it deserves. Until next time, remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But between the battles, in the quiet moments when the guns fall silent, there is also suffering on a scale that defies comprehension. These are not just stories. They are warnings about what we might become if we lose sight of our humanity in pursuit of survival. Thank you for watching. Stay vigilant. And never forget that in the vastness of the 41st millennium, there are always fates worse than death. For the Emperor, for humanity, for the hope that even in the darkest night, some spark of our better nature might persist.